I respect 50 the most out of anybody.
Listen, this is not something you hear every day, because out of everybody in the music industry, Chris Brown just said he respects 50 Cent more than anyone. And yeah, that sounds normal at first, until you realize who 50 Cent actually is. This is not the guy people usually call respectable. This is the same 50 who trolls, people publicly embarrasses celebrities, and never holds back. That's not a casual compliment. So, when Chris Brown says that, that's a statement. And it immediately got people asking, what does Chris Brown see in 50 Cent that others don't? Because let's be honest, most people don't associate 50 with respect. They associate him with chaos, drama, and going too far. But Chris Brown is looking at something completely different. And the craziest part is, this didn't start recently.
So, I actually met 50 when I was 12 years old. I did a G-Unit campaign with him, with me and my best friend. He'll tell you this.
This actually goes all the way back to when Chris Brown was a kid, before the fame, before the success, before anybody knew his name. He was around 12 years old, trying to get into the industry, doing small opportunities, just trying to be seen. And somehow, he ended up around 50 Cent, back when 50 was running everything. G-Unit was at its peak. They were dominating the game. And Chris Brown was just a kid in that environment, watching everything, learning, trying to stand out. And he said something interesting about that moment. He said when he was there, they actually listened to his music. They didn't just brush him off. They didn't fake interest. They paid attention. Now, they didn't sign him. They didn't immediately put him on. But they respected what he was doing. And that mattered, because when you're young and you're trying to make it, just being taken seriously means everything. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. Years later, when Chris Brown became a superstar, 50 Cent remembered him. Think about that, because this industry forgets people fast. You could meet someone one day, and the next time you see them, they act like they don't know you. But 50, he remembered him from when he was just a kid. And that stuck because that tells you something about how he moves. And that's what Chris Brown is really talking about. Not the trolling, not the internet version, the real version, the one people don't always see. Because from Chris Brown's perspective, 50 Cent isn't just some loud personality online. He's consistent. He's the same person all the time. No fake energy, no switching up depending on who's around. And in an industry where people are constantly acting, that stands out. That's rare. And that's exactly why Chris Brown respects him. Not because 50 is perfect, but because he's real. And that's something a lot of people claim, but very few actually live by. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because once Chris Brown said that publicly, it didn't just stay quiet. It got attention. And then 50 Cent responded. And the way he responded told people even more about how he really sees things. Now, this is where things start to shift. Because once Chris Brown said that publicly, people were waiting to see how 50 Cent would respond. And if you know 50, you know he doesn't react like everyone else. He doesn't jump into long explanations. He doesn't overtalk. He says just enough and lets people think. And that's exactly what he did here. He basically responded with one simple idea. Real recognizes real. Now, that might sound basic, but coming from 50, that means a lot, because this is someone who doesn't give respect easily. He's built his whole reputation on calling people out, on exposing fake behavior, on testing people. So, if he acknowledges you, that means he sees something real. And that's what makes this moment different, because this isn't about music. This isn't about hits or charts. This is about mindset. Now, let's be real for a sec. A lot of people in the industry play roles. They act a certain way for interviews, another way behind the scenes, and a completely different way when the cameras are off. But according to Chris Brown, 50 Cent doesn't do that. He said 50 is the same person all the time. And if you think about it, that actually lines up with everything we've seen. Whether he's joking, calling someone out, or promoting something, he's always the same energy. No filter, no pretending. And that consistency is what people who understand the game respect, because it's rare. Now here's something most people don't notice. 50 Cent doesn't try to be liked. He's not chasing approval. He's not trying to fit in. And because of that, he ends up standing out even more. Because when everyone else is being careful, he's being direct. When everyone else is playing safe, he's saying what he wants. And that creates a certain level of power, because people know, you can't control him. You can't predict him. And you definitely can't pressure him. And that's something artists like Chris Brown understand, because they've been through the industry long enough to know what's real and what's fake. They've seen people switch up. They've seen people act different depending on the situation. So when they see someone who stays the same, they respect it, even if they don't agree with everything that person does. And that's the key point here. Chris Brown is not saying 50 is perfect. He's saying he's real, and there's a big difference. Now, at the same time, this also says something about Chris Brown himself, because making a statement like this comes with attention. People are going to react. People are going to question it. People are going to say, why him? Out of everyone, why 50? And the answer is simple, because respect in this industry is not about who's the nicest. It's about who stays solid, who stays consistent, who doesn't fold under pressure. And whether people like it or not, 50 Cent has shown that for years. But here's where things start getting even more interesting, because Chris Brown is not the only one who has seen that side of him. There are other artists, other people behind the scene who have experienced a completely different version of 50 Cent, and what they say about him might actually change how people look at him completely. Now, this is the part a lot of people don't expect, because the more you look into this, the more you realize something important. Chris Brown is not the only one who sees 50 Cent this way. There are multiple people in the industry who have worked closely with 50, and they all describe him differently than the internet does. And one of the biggest examples is Mary J. Blige. Now, when she spoke about 50 Cent, she didn't talk about drama, she didn't talk about trolling, she didn't talk about controversy. She talked about something completely different. She called him a great boss, a supportive person, someone who actually helps people. And that right there completely flips the narrative, because most people online only see one side of 50, the loud side, the entertaining side, the side that goes viral. But the people who actually work with him see something else. They see someone who builds, who creates opportunity, who puts people in positions to win. And that's something you don't really see unless you're close to it. Now, think about this. Mary J. Blige said that working with 50 came at a time when she actually needed it, and he gave her that opportunity. That's not something people talk about enough, because helping someone behind the scenes doesn't go viral. It doesn't get clicks, it doesn't trend, but it matters. And that's why people in the industry respect him differently, because they're not judging him off headlines, they're judging him off real experiences. Now, at the same time, this doesn't mean 50 Cent is soft. It doesn't mean he's changed, because even Mary J. Blige made something clear. She said he's a good person, but you do not want to get on his bad side. And that right there is the balance, because 50 operates on two levels. On one side, he's supportive, focused, business-minded. On the other side, he's strategic, calculated, and if you cross him, he doesn't forget. And that's what makes him different, because most people in the industry are one or the other. They're either nice but not taken seriously, or aggressive but not respected. 50 somehow manages to be both, and that's rare. Now, here's another thing people don't realize. 50 Cent doesn't just react, he plans. Every move, every response, every post, there's thought behind it. Even when it looks like he's just joking, there's usually a purpose, whether it's promoting something, controlling a narrative, or keeping attention on himself. And that level of awareness is what separates him from most artists, because at this point, he's not just a rapper, he's a brand, a businessman, a media figure, and that changes how he plays the game. Now, connect that back to what Chris Brown said. When he says he respects 50, he's not just talking about personality, he's talking about survival, because both of them have been through the highs and lows of the industry. Both of them have faced criticism, controversy, pressure, and both of them are still here, still relevant, still winning. And when you survive in an industry like this, you start recognizing certain traits. You start recognizing consistency, strength, authenticity. And that's exactly what Chris Brown sees in 50. Not the jokes, not the headlines, the foundation. Now, here's where things get even more interesting, because the more people start speaking positively about 50 Cent, the more it challenges the public perception of him, because for years, he's been painted as the villain, the problem, the one causing chaos. But what if that's only part of the story? What if the same person people see as a villain is also one of the most respected figures behind the scene? Because that's what this is starting to look like. Two completely different images existing at the same time. And depending on where you stand, you see a completely different version of him. And that raises a bigger question. Is 50 Cent misunderstood, or is he just playing a role that works perfectly for him? Now, this is where everything really comes together. Because when you step back and look at the full picture, this isn't just about one compliment. It's not just about Chris Brown saying he respects 50 Cent. It's about what that actually represents. Because for years, 50 Cent has been seen a certain way. Online, he's the troll, the instigator, the one who doesn't let anything slide, the one who will turn any situation into a headline. That's the version most people know. That's what goes viral. That's what people react to. But behind that, there's another version, a version that doesn't get talked about as much, a version that people inside the industry actually experience. And that version is very different, because when you listen to people who have worked with him, when you hear how they describe him, you start noticing a pattern. They don't describe chaos, they describe consistency. They don't describe someone fake. They describe someone who is always the same. And that's something a lot of people overlook, because in an industry where image is everything, most people are constantly adjusting, changing how they act depending on the room, switching energy depending on who they're around. But 50 Cent doesn't move like that. What you see is what you get. And whether you like it or not, that kind of consistency builds respect, even from people who don't agree with him. Now think about it like this. There are a lot of artists who are liked but not respected. And then there are people who are respected. Even if they're not liked, 50 falls into that second category because he doesn't try to please everyone. He doesn't try to be the most liked person in the room. He focuses on control, on positioning, on staying ahead. And that's something artists like Chris Brown understand because they've both been through the same kind of pressure. They've both been criticized, misunderstood, and constantly watched. And when you go through that for years, you start to recognize people who are built the same way. People who don't fold, people who don't switch up, people who stay solid no matter what's happening around them. And that's what this moment is really about. It's not just respect, it's recognition. Now, here's the part that makes this even more interesting, because there are still people who will look at this and disagree. They'll say, how can you respect someone who's always in drama? How can you respect someone who goes after people publicly? And those are valid questions, because from the outside, it can look like chaos. It can look unnecessary. It can look like too much. But from the inside, it looks different, because people who understand the industry know that attention is power, control is power, and being able to stay relevant without changing who you are, that's real power. And 50 Cent has mastered that. He knows how to stay in conversations. He knows how to control narratives. And most importantly, he knows how to stay himself while doing it. Now, that doesn't mean everyone has to agree with him. It doesn't mean everyone has to like how he moves, but it does explain why people respect him. Because respect in this industry is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about standing on what you say, and it's about not breaking under pressure. And 50 Cent has done that for years. That's why his name still holds weight. That's why people still pay attention when he speaks. And that's why moments like this don't go unnoticed. Because when someone like Chris Brown, who has seen everything this industry has to offer, comes out and says, I respect him the most, that's not random, that's earned. Now, at the end of the day, this all comes down to perspective. Some people will always see 50 Cent as the villain. Others will see him as one of the smartest and most consistent figures in the game. And maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Maybe he's both. Because in an industry like this, sometimes the people who last the longest are the ones who understand how to be both respected and unpredictable at the same time. So now the question is simple.
This altercation
is 50 Cent really one of the most respected figures in the industry today? Or is this just how certain artists choose to see him? Let me know what you think.